Hi, I'm Gnome, and welcome to Auburnvale. This is a read-through of the original document posted to the 2007scape subreddit at the same time that this video has gone live. That post, as well as an Imgur mirror, will be linked in the description. You'll also find a link to the trailer for Auburnvale, which you might want to check out before returning here. Note that this project is pretty visually dependent, and I won't be doing much of a verbal presentation here to describe the area. Instead, I'll let an unedited runaround of the map play in the background while I read through the rest of the document. Let's formally begin. Over the past month, I spent ceaseless hours discovering OSRS map editing and designing Auburnvale based on a previous 2D map by Gentle Tractor that inspired me and deserved to be brought to life. Today, I'd like to present the fruits of my labor, walk through the making of Auburnvale and the challenges it posed, and make a small request to the dev team, diving into my hopes for the future of old-school Runescape and our player-developer dynamics. But first, let's jump right into the fun part, and explore what no scaper has yet discovered. So join me, friends, as we wander into the depths of Varlamore, across its vast plains and rolling savannas, and into the red golden coasts of Auburnvale. Features. First, let's take a look at her inspiration. This was originally designed by Gentle Tractor about 3 years ago. Next, let's take a look at my auto-generated Auburnvale, based on the 3D implementation. Note a few important details that will be discussed in depth later. First, the size scaling of each map is different. There's a lot to talk about here, but it's pretty obvious at first glance. The landmass I created is 33% larger than Gentle Tractor's. The objects are all the same, including buildings and other such landmarks, but the area is scaled up. As such, I've only truly built about 2x2 map chunks of Gentle Tractor's original work, but scaled it up to fill 3x3 chunks. There's a fairly lengthy history about how this mistake came about, but we'll explore that soon enough. Second, coloring was pretty difficult to achieve faithfully. The kit I had for painting overlays and underlays was rather limited, and as far as I knew, I couldn't add new colors, and didn't really want to yet. At this point, the document starts a tour of the village, but again, as it's already playing in the background, we'll skip this through. If you'd like to go see it, click the link below. Part 2. The making of Auburnvale. Beginning and disclaimer. Recently, I was approached by the lead developer for an upcoming RuneScape private server, or RSPS, who had seen some of my previous work, and wanted my thoughts for how they might integrate it into their version of OSRS. Historically, my thoughts on private servers have always been mixed. I've never played any of them myself, being somewhat uncomfortable with the general business model and possible security concerns. Nonetheless, I kept an open mind, and the interactions I've had have been nothing short of overwhelmingly pleasant. The developers have been some of the most knowledgeable and helpful folk, and I was happy to provide my design theories and ideas, just as I would do for anyone who asked. If there are people who are willing to push the boundaries of what's possible with RuneScape, or are ready to challenge the norm and try to achieve the game's full potential, it would be found within the RSPS community. I'll be keeping both the developers and private server anonymous, as the publicity this presentation might bring can easily cause more trouble than help, and I doubt either Jagex or the subreddit moderators would like that sort of advertisement. My thoughts on RSPSs are still ambivalent, but the devs I've chatted with have earned my respect, and granted me the knowledge and tools to create Auburnvale. It is not my intention to use these gifts for purposes outside of making OSRS a better game, driving deeper conversations across the old school community, and for personal artistic expression. I understand that such maps are frequently created and sold for profit. In contrast, I will not be selling Auburnvale or any map-making services, and won't be making money off any YouTube videos relating to Auburnvale. At the request of the OSRS team, I'm happy to provide Auburnvale's files free of charge for whatever purpose they might have for them. In short, I understand that there are possible reservations associated with my use of certain tools and the public presentation of its products, but I hope that it's understood only as a sincere effort to push discussion and strengthen the game that we so love. I'm a simple artist with simple thoughts, and little mind for business anyway. Inspiration. With RSPSi in my hands, I wanted to make something worthy of presentation, something fresh and eye-catching. I was tempted to make an entirely new place, but the thought also occurred to me that I was finally able to bring my Arceus rework to life, see reference 1, a project I had spent quite some time on, and was still rather passionate about. Even so, it wasn't quite exciting enough to pour hundreds of hours into, and I knew the design had to be reiterated once or twice by actual map makers for it to work well. That's when I recalled an ancient piece of history, Auburnvale. Back in 2016, Gentle Tractor released his Zaya redesigned, which rocked the community and spurred the OSRS team to rebuild Zaya with better design principles. One piece of Zaya redesigned is Auburnvale, a rich autumn-themed city and landscape. The aesthetic stuck so closely with Gentle Tractor that 3 years ago, he went back and built Auburnvale again, this time on its own, see reference 2. The design had stuck with me as well, and it offered a great opportunity to create something striking and new. That said, I didn't quite tell Gentle Tractor that I was making Auburnvale, not until about last week after the map was entirely complete and the trailer was set. I bother the man far too much as is. Besides, he only deals in 2 dimensions. He'd hardly be interested in a third, right? Turns out, he is interested in all 3 dimensions. To ease him into the whole thing, I got him on call and showed him the trailer linked in the comments. Gentle Tractor's response? He liked it. An apology. As my first 3D mapping project, I was aware of the impending learning curve, and it didn't help that I was trying to create Auburnvale as Gentle Tractor designed it, instead of creating something inspired by Auburnvale. Mod West has previously stated that he doesn't make many OSRS realistic 2D map prototypes anymore, because they're far too much effort for how well they guide the actual 3D implementation. It's much more efficient with time and resources to perform a quick sketch or mock-up of the area you're looking for, than to build a 3D map from there. This makes perfect sense, as OSRS automatically generates the 2D map based on the 3D implementation. By creating just a 2D map, you're really just reverse engineering the natural map generation process. That's perfectly fine for all you 2D map makers, but don't do what I did. Don't take the next step in reverse engineering and try to create a perfect 3D map from a realistic 2D map. It was hell. Attempting to get things to perfectly line up with Gentle Tractor's map took many hours more than just creating something entirely original, so I quickly gave up on trying to make things perfect. With 2 hours I could get a small section to represent the original work about 80% correctly, but it would have taken another 8 hours to catch another 10%, and it just wasn't worth the time. No one was holding me to 100% anyway, besides my own pride and self-importance. Furthermore, the map that RSPSi rendered was in 4x4, meaning that 4x4 pixels make up an in-game tile, whereas both the Wiki's world map and Gentle Tractor's work are rendered in 3x3, where 3x3 pixels make up an in-game tile. At least, that's what I believed, the false assumption on which the entire map was created. Up until last Friday, as I had just finished composing and decorating this entire document, I was still under the impression that Gentle Tractor's map was made in 3x3, believing that his full map spanned about 5x4 map chunks. Somehow, I had gotten some early measurements very wrong, and had never bothered remeasuring. Therefore, when creating Auburnvale, I thought I was cutting down Gentle Tractor's work into just the most important 3x3 or 9 total chunks to reduce the workload. However, after reviewing my work, Gentle Tractor corrected me. His Auburnvale was actually made in 4x4, not 3x3, and in reality I was taking 2x2 or 4 total chunks of his map and scaling them up to occupy 3x3 or 9 total chunks. In short, my landscape was 33% larger than he originally designed it. The buildings and in-game objects are all scaled properly, and the world still feels pretty natural when you're inside it, but nonetheless, my intention to try and replicate the original work has turned out rather disastrously. There are both advantages and disadvantages to this arrangement. The good thing is that upscaling the map is generally fine, as long as the space is properly filled, which I believe I've accomplished reasonably well when considering the actual 3D implementation. The major disadvantage is that, as shown on the maps here, the spacing between important landmarks is made somewhat awkward. The buildings would feel more village-like if they were packed tighter together, and the result of upscaling is unmistakable in the apparent sparseness of trees, rocks, and bushes. You'll even find that the roads and rivers are quite wide compared to the average. Again, this isn't as noticeable in the 3D world itself, as I've done quite a bit to accommodate the extra space, but it's quite conspicuous here. Having only realized the full gravity of my mistake within the past week, I've been left pretty emotionally distraught. A few early miscalculations, followed by my misinterpretation and wild rationalization, and I am left devastated by my sheer incompetence. This isn't the Auburnvale I originally wanted, but I'm entirely mixed on if it's one I'd like to give up now that I have it. If I could go back to the beginning, I would keep it to scale as Gentle Tractor had imagined it, and yet I think I can say with pride that I used the extra space well, and applied clever solutions to accommodate my failure. If my first mistake was trying to replicate his original map instead of just making something inspired by it, I guess this second mistake turns that right around. The end result is something different, and it may take some time before I come to terms with it, and can apply a more rational understanding of the change. To you who came here wishing to see Gentle Tractor's Auburnvale brought to life, I sincerely apologize for my failure to see it through. I'm still proud of what I ended up accomplishing, but I'm ashamed of the opportunity I lost because of my poor research and planning. RSPSi, learning, suffering. Of course, that wasn't the only problem I faced thus far. I've been told tales of historical map editors, and how terrible they used to be, and how RSPSi is truly magical in comparison. Not that it doesn't have its fair share of bugs that the regular artist has to contend with. The original creator has long since abandoned the project, but my case was different. I was the chosen one, chosen to suffer, that is. Somehow, my version of the map editor decided to bug out most of Runescape. Thousands of objects were missing or unavailable, and 95% of game chunks would straight up fail to load. I couldn't even find normal trees, which at one point left me putting in a bizarre substitute without realizing. While another creator would be able to pick up Varrock Castle and plant it in their own map in mere seconds, scrap it for spare parts, and build something anew, I had to spend hours trolling through object IDs one number at a time to find the most niche angled roof tile I'd been missing. I knew the game world quite well, knew the exact object I wanted, but was unable to just jump to that chunk and rip it straight from the map. RSPSi hated me and demanded that Auburnvale fail. I had no support system to fall back on, and had to find the most scuffed arrangements to accomplish my specific vision. I would hazard a guess that the entire project took me 50 hours longer compared to the average RSPSi user because of this. Now, using my mangled version of RSPSi is infinitely better than having no map editor at all, so I can't be entirely angry. Even so, it's like being given the ability to move mountains, but only one boulder at a time. Being given a car to journey, but being restricted to the left side of the road like a sick bastard. A strong man would have dropped the project altogether at these horrendous conditions, moving on to become an aeronautical engineer, but I am no such man. I just like suffering, I guess. Could Auburnvale actually be implemented? What you've been shown is a bit of an illusion, a complete area but not a complete place, and shouldn't be compared to Varrock, Prif, or Fossil Island. No real NPCs have been introduced, either monsters or characters. No stores have been stocked, no dialogue written, no quests created, no music or environmental sounds added, and no new interactions or meaningful content. Sure, any new place is awesome to explore, and I'm confident some weird meadow would build around 2 ticking redwoods while filling water skins and farming bronze axes, but there's very little new in Auburnvale as it stands. Additionally, numerous placeholder objects are present because of my lack of ability to create and introduce new objects, which I'm sure I'll dive into someday soon. Those smaller redwood trees, for example, are just mid-growth states of the farmable redwood tree. If you stepped into Auburnvale right now, there'd be a left-click guide option to tell you its growth state, and maybe a chance they'd just spontaneously grow. Similarly, while reusing many assets is common and perfectly fine, new areas tend to come with a few more unique visual features. A new roof tile set, for example, would probably give Auburnvale a little more visual identity, and another style of maple tree would spice up the forests a bit more. Finally, it may seem an odd issue, but Auburnvale doesn't directly connect to any current landmass. It's intended to sit somewhere in western Varlamore, on the southwestern end of Zaya, but that might make travel between current in-game locales and Auburnvale somewhat awkward unless a direct travel option were opened up. Of course, that doesn't even include quality assurance. With my limited knowledge of the back end of area design, there are likely many features that aren't working as intended, or have interactions they're not supposed to, and I genuinely fear the technological struggle of building my own server to test my creation. A couple objects also keep reappearing despite being deleted, including half a redwood tree in the middle of the village. QA is everything. After all, we wouldn't want to let some artist introduce anything twisted after playing with the map editor, now would we? The depths of RuneScape. The wider world of meta RuneScape is a deep rabbit hole. Once I ate the fruit of knowledge, I knew there was no going back. The first bite failed to satiate, instead leading to a full 5-course meal. I've grown up with the same stories of RSPSs as most of you. Tales of wacky game worlds, XP boosted to the stars, and horrendous graphical and design work. But being exposed to such a universe drew more questions. What exactly are RSPS devs capable of, and why do they draw certain populations? What I've discovered is a special aspect of private servers, one that Jagex themselves have seeded, but never fully cultivated from their player base. Inspiration, and the means to realize it into something tangible. Yes, because as much as the RSPS scene can be shady, can feel dirty or untrue to RuneScape, can destroy Gillenor's aesthetic, can disregard game balance, or heavily favor one niche community to the detriment of all others, it is simultaneously home to some of the most invested and inventive players out there. But players wouldn't even be the right term anymore. The geniuses who are building these tools to modify the game, these bridges, are turning players into developers, giving people the opportunity to bring their ideas to life. It's messy, of course, and only at times will it reach the standard of quality that the OSRS team can output. So they'll fail, and they'll do so often, but that's the cost of taking risks. 100 ideas sacrificed, but a few good ones making it out. I'm not proposing that Jagex takes such risks, not with a permanently live game that only exists because of a series of very poorly planned risks, but it would be something else if players had the chance at meaningful creation, to be able to experiment, discover, and present ideas and inspiration to the community and old school team at a more concrete level than what is currently possible. Part 3. A modest proposal. To be direct, many of us would greatly appreciate it if there was public access to the official map editor and all associated game objects. I understand that there are several hurdles working against such an operation. The technical leaps required would take time, but individuals in the RSPS scene have been making that jump since RuneScape's inception. Similarly, I recognize that Jagex would be reluctant to open up methods that would ease private server development, but RSPSs have been using Jagex equivalent mapping tools for years. I just want such tools to be easily available to the common creator, officially supported and bug-free, or at least minimized, without paywall like RSPSi since its abandonment, and properly optimized. In doing so, we could foster a community of invested developers and artists to push and evolve the game, stirring deeper discussion about art and game design, and building a stronger, more communal understanding of old-school RuneScape between player and developer. A week before I finished Auburnvale, I was reloading my map files onto RSPSi when suddenly I got an error message, the same error I get every time I tried to load an unloadable map chunk. As described earlier, I was somehow cursed among all RSPSi users, being restricted from accessing most map chunks and innumerable objects. As far as I knew, this error was unfixable. I panicked. I tried several times over. Same error, again and again. I had lost everything, hundreds of hours of work. I was devastated but not surprised, knowing my program was gifted. Luckily, I tried the old close and reopen the program and it worked, restoring my last save in all my efforts. When starting out, I knew that my whole setup was shaky. I signed that waiver fully aware of its implications. But Jagex, my boy, I can't take that kind of scare again. Old Gnome's heart is already on the brink. It won't beat through another such shock. My frail will doesn't want another commitment to quality, size, and creativity with that kind of risk over my head. I wish to create and inspire with the confidence that my work won't self-destruct, to use such tools to their fullest capacity, and to have some small support backing me up. I just ask you to please invest in and help build your community, and it will pay you back 1,000 times over. That is my humble request. The future of old school. This most modest of proposals comes from a simple artist, or rather, one who feigns artistic capabilities and only stands because others have propped him up. Considering the small victories I've won in my short career, I can only imagine what truly committed and capable community members would accomplish given the arsenal to do so. Such is my vision of Old School's future, not just being the player-driven game as Jagex advertises, but being player-created. My request simultaneously encompasses an appeal for creating the new, for pushing the game to novel and unique heights, rather than just retreading paths that have already been walked. New is dangerous. It's much easier to bait players with nostalgia and offer them features from RS2 or RS3 that are comfortable and familiar. In terms of finances and publicity, it's always safe to bank on players' old, fond memories, but I see Old School as an opportunity to try something truly new, to take lessons from the past and apply stronger design philosophies and create better content. It's too tempting for Jagex to just give players the older content they shout for, but players themselves can be quite different. If the modding communities for popular games like Skyrim or Minecraft are any evidence, or even our wonderful RuneLite team, it's that players will do extraordinary things when unburdened by financial reports, quotas, and deadlines. Sheer passion and dedication can, at times, produce what budgets cannot. I would see Jagex harness that untapped power, but the first step is theirs to take, and I see it beginning with the official map editor. Old School in HD was never considered a financially viable product by Jagex. Indeed, it still might not be. It's only because 117, a passionate community developer, was willing to spend an extraordinary amount of time and resources that we now have it. Another farewell. Well, I suppose I have nothing else for you today. If you do like the look of Auburnvale, the trailer and post are linked in the description. It might give you a bit of a better idea of what Auburnvale really looks like. In the end, I just hope that today's presentation inspires you and hints at what our game could become should Jagex choose to further invest in community design and the development of community tools. Thanks for coming along for the ride. No, truly, thank you. I am motivated by the passion that is reciprocated through this wonderful community and our team of devoted devs. Until next year, thanks for reading.